None of us were prepared for what we'd find that night, or how much it would change us all. I arrived just as the sun began its slide into the slumber of a dark night. The town stank of a desperate longing to be what it once was.
Ron Gilbert is here at Gamelab 2016 to talk about his lifetime adventures. How has your lifetime adventure been like so far?
I think it's been pretty enjoyable. I think making games is definitely, a very fun thing to be doing as a career. You're getting to create weird things and play a lot of games and make games, and I can't imagine doing anything else but this.
What is the secret of Monkey Island?
I don't know. I wish I knew. I was hoping you were going to tell me.
What is the secret behind getting it back to your hands and to your...
Oh, that I do not know. I wish I knew the answer to that question.
There's hope yet?
I don't know if there's hope or not. I think it's one of those things that if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I'm not kind of holding out hope for anything like that happening.
On to Thimbleweed Park. Back in the GTC, you told us that perhaps you're trying more, giving more important role to the puzzles this time, to how the players change the world. How did you approach this?
The thing is, the players want to be able to influence, what's going on, and so, there are things you're doing where, players are making very small changes, right? It's not a big branching story, right? There aren't 10 different endings that you can do. But there's just very subtle things that you do that players, may choose a dialogue choice at one point, and then they see later on in the game, oh, that choice actually did matter just because this person is responding differently or this person is doing something differently. And I think that's very interesting. It's like I almost chuckle in a game that I'm playing it and I make a choice, and then I see, oh, that had this very subtle influence later on, rather than being a big choice that oh, the story took a big branch, but some small little thing changed. I think that's very interesting.
What about the mechanics themselves? Can you give us an example of a crazy puzzle we can expect in the game, like super absurd or...
Well, you can't do really absurd puzzles because the puzzles at some level have to make sense to people, right? And I think if you do a lot of just really weird and crazy stuff, players end up hating you, as a designer, right? They hate me personally because I've done some completely weird puzzle that seems unfair, right? So, really good puzzle design is about making a puzzle really challenging that you scratch your head on, but when you solve it, what you should say is like, oh, I should have thought of that, right? It's like you want the player to blame themselves for the puzzle, not the game for the puzzle. And so, you can't do just really strange and bizarre stuff. You need to do stuff that's kind of funny and clever, but it can't be completely nonsensical.
What about the adorable art style you're using? What can you tell us about it, this retro style you're having with the sprites and this?
Well, I really like 8-bit art. I've always loved that, and doing a game like that, I think there's a kind of certain charm and innocence to that stuff, and I think that whole era of games back then, there was a kind of an innocence to it because the game business really hadn't been established, the art form really hadn't been figured out yet, and I think a lot of people do 8-bit art because they really are trying to kind of capture the innocence of those games and that genre. But if you want to do really good 8-bit art, you don't want to just do it like it was done back then. You want to kind of embody what that art meant back then, but still kind of modernize it in a way. Use more modern techniques for how you're doing stuff. And I think that's really where the kind of artistry of modern 8-bit art comes from. It's pulling stuff from the past, but also applying what we've learned to that.
At which point are you currently with the project? I mean, I guess it's final stretch. How are you finalizing the game?
Yeah, we're in the final stretch. It'll come out in early 2017. The whole game is essentially done. we're just doing a lot of polish. We're doing a lot of play testing. Through the course of playtesting, we occasionally find puzzles that they don't make a lot of sense, and so we'll go in and we'll change them and tweak them and add stuff to it. So that's kind of the stage we're in with the game right now.
So that's all based on feedback from your tests you've been doing. What else have you gathered from that feedback?
Watching people play games, it's always very interesting to watch people play your games, and mostly what you're looking for is where people are confused, right? You want to see, well, where people are stuck, what isn't making sense to people. And I think, the thing that we've really, kind of figured out from watching people play the games is that I think what people want today is they still want a challenging game, but they want to make sure that they have the right focus. And the thing that we're really trying to do with Thimbleweed Park that I think is probably different from how those games were made, back at LucasArts, is we're just trying to give players a good sense of focus, right? They kind of want to feel comfortable that they're doing the right thing, that they're along the right path that they should be going on to solve the puzzle or complete the story. That they're not just horribly confused, right? And so when we're doing play tests, we'll kind of watch people and we'll go, you know what? They have no idea what they should be doing right now. They're just kind of banging their head against puzzles. And that might have been okay, for Monkey Island and those games. But so it's about looking at that and going, okay, well, we're going to have a character just say something. Just one line of dialogue just kind of gives people a little bit of focus, right? It's like we're not doing hint systems. We're not doing little pop-ups on the screen that say stuff. But it's just about the characters going, oh, what, maybe she should mention, this pie that she wants one more time, right? Because that'll kind of give people the direction that they need for things.
And not being too spoiler-ish, what can you tell us about the story itself?
Well, the story, it's about these two detectives that show up in the town of Thimbleweed because this dead body has been discovered in the river. And so the story is kind of about how they start out investigating this crime, but it just kind of, it's like the body really isn't the story, right? That's really this thing that just kind of gets the story starting. And what they figure out when they get to town is this is a very strange town, and there's a lot of really weird stuff going on. And it's like I like to say the body is actually so unimportant that it just remains in the river the entire game. It's like nobody even bothers to move it, right? Because they just instantly discovered this very, very bizarre town of Thimbleweed Park.
I personally loved the cave with three characters at the same time. That was some innovative mechanics and stuff. Any lesson learned from that project?
Yeah, the cave was a very interesting project, and I think the thing that I really learned from that was, I had, there were multiple characters, right? And you choose your characters at the beginning of the game, and then you play through it, and then you choose another set of characters you could play again. And the thing that really surprised me is that I kind of expected that people would play the cave in the same way that people played Maniac Mansion. Was they would choose their characters, they would play the game, and they would win the game, and then they would stop playing the game. And then maybe like 2 months later they would boot up Maniac Mansion again and choose some new characters. And I kind of thought that's the way people would play the cave, but that's not the way people played the cave. And what they did was they chose their characters, they went through the game, they won the game, they immediately started the game over and chose 3 new characters and then played the game again. And I think people saw a lot of repetition in that, right? They saw it's like, oh, well, I'm now having to play these same areas over again. And that kind of caught me by surprise, because I think if you play the cave and then you wait a couple of months and you play it again, I think it plays as a much, much better game, because you don't see that instant repetition of these areas. Where if you were to play Maniac Mansion one after another, you would see that same repetition creep in. So I think that's kind of the one mistake that I made with that. And I think with Thimbleweed Park, we've got 5 different characters, and they all have different stories, and they all have like different endings to the stories. But I think because of my experience with the cave, it's like we said, you know what? You need to be able to get all 5 endings in one playthrough of the game. We're not going to, make you start the game over to get Ransom's ending because you got Dolores's ending. So I think that was the big lesson that I think I got from The Cave.
I actually played The Cave multiplayer, with 2 more guys. And are you perhaps trying to do like real-time multiplayer adventure storytelling somehow?
Well, I think adventure games have always been multiplayer, right? They're the original multiplayer game because, I know when I was playing text adventures with my friends, it was all of us sitting around a computer, shouting out, "Oh, try this, go here, go do this." And I think that's the way a lot of people, especially, when you were kids, you played these games in a group, right? And so, things like The Cave, it's a single player game, but it's important that 2 other people can pick up a controller and can play the game. And I think, a game like Thimbleweed Park is the same way. And even when we do play tests, when we bring people in to play the game, sometimes we say, "Oh, come alone." And other times we say, "Bring a friend." Because we want to see how people play the game when they're playing with a friend. Because that kind of dialogue that you have with somebody can actually change the dynamic of how people approach puzzles and how they approach puzzle solving.
What do you think of the genre in general, the adventure, graphic adventures, games in general? Are we facing a new golden age with many little to mid-sized to even big-sized studios doing adventures now with some publishers such as Daedalic in Germany, or in Spain we also have some adventure games now. So are we facing something like that?
I think what you're seeing with games is that the whole market for games is just expanding, right? Everybody plays games now, right? From kids to grandmothers, right? Everybody plays games. And so you're seeing this expansion of these markets, and where adventure games, kind of became, this very niche market that wasn't really growing very much. Now that a lot more people are playing games, I think you see these markets really expanding. And so a lot more people are interested in adventure games. And I think adventure games are primarily about narrative, and they're about puzzles. And people love stories, right? I think stories are ingrained into our DNA at some point. And adventure games are kind of a way that I think a lot of, the mass market can really kind of understand games and enjoys games. And I think you see a lot of that, with the success of the Telltale games. I mean, these are adventure games, but they're primarily narrative focused. They're not particularly difficult to play. They're just an experience to have. And I think you do see people that really resonates with a lot of people.
What about technology? Do you personally think we live better when in a VGA world with 8-bit graphics than now with all the teraflops talk and all the...
No, I much prefer today than I did back then. I love 8-bit art. I still want to do 8-bit art. I mean, Thimbleweed Park is all 8-bit art, but having actual processor power to put on that is it's a relief, right? There's so many things that we had to worry about back then that we pull our hair out trying to get screens to scroll. I mean, getting a screen to scroll in Maniac Mansion was a huge technological feat. Now it's I don't even care, right? The screen just scrolls, right? I don't have to worry about it. And so I think, in that respect, I like the modern world. But I also like 8-bit art. And so it's really about taking 8-bit art and that aesthetic, but really applying a lot of kind of modern techniques to that, both artistic and technological.
Let me try to get this right. How much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? That's the closing one.
Yeah, I don't know.
You don't know. First one and last one, and you don't know the answer?
I have no idea. 7.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time, Ron.
Thank you.